Hello and welcome to The Perspective. I'm your host Rafae Iqbal, and in today's show we'll be talking about Pakistan's foreign policy, the challenges and the way forward. Of course, we know if we talk about foreign policy, it's something that is, of course, goes hand to hand with the world's developments, and of course we know that in these modern times there's a lot of changing dynamics going on in the world, and everyone knows as well foreign policy of every country is subject to these developments as well. There's a new US President-elect, Donald Trump, and we know he's a very flamboyant personality. He talks about international relations, he talks about America's foreign policy in a very clear and bold manner. And we know that with him coming into the White House, there's going to be a lot of changes in America's foreign policy as well. And the changes in Americans' foreign policy, it does affect how the things work on the global level as well. Of course, America being one of the most strongest, one of the being superpower in the world, and of course the challenges that its foreign policy is going to address, it's going to affect the foreign policy of American allies as well, and the foreign policy that other countries are going to have with regards to the different issues that are being highlighted by the world community. Of course, Pakistan faces its own set of challenges. If we talk about the regional issues, Pakistan has neighbors, and of course one of those neighbors, Pakistan has time and time reiterated that one of those neighbors' soil is being used to carry out terrorism in Pakistan. There's a security threat that prevails. And of course, Pakistan has repeatedly called upon not just the Afghan interim authorities but also upon the world community to take action and to take cognizance of what Pakistan is facing, the instability the region is facing, and how it is hampering the progress and prosperity of the region at large. It was also something that was discussed recently in the SCO, and of course there's other issues like economy. We know the government has been putting in a lot of efforts to revitalize the national economy, to attract foreign direct investment in the country, and of course there's other measures being taken by the government as well to, of course, increase trade activities and gather support from friendly countries as well. The Chief of Army Staff, General Syed while addressing the Margala dialogue, he also stated that Pakistan, when we talk about Pakistan's foreign policy, the national interest should be something that should be kept in view, and of course the foreign policy of the country should reflect upon the country's national interest. That is what the government is also focused on at the moment. We know with the changing dynamics, new policies of the government, of course with the new vigor for which the national economy is to be revitalized, and of course the security threat that Pakistan has been trying to address, it will come up with a foreign policy that the government aligns with the modern challenges that the country faces. We'll deliberate on all the different aspects regarding, of course, Pakistan's foreign policy and how it goes hand to hand with the challenges being faced by Pakistan, the region, and of course the international players. In the studios, we have been joined by a former Foreign Secretary and President of the IRS, Jauhar Saleem. Along with that, we have been joined by Khalid Taimur Akram, who is an IR expert, and on Skype we have been joined by Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan, former ambassador. I'd like to thank you all for your time and being part of the conversation. Coming towards the studios, Mr. Jauhar Saleem first. Of course, there's a new president-elect. Of course, the US is going to have a new president in the White House, and we know he's very open and very bold with regards to what he thinks about issues being faced by the world and American foreign policy. How do you see America under Trump?
Yeah, that's why it would be very interesting, Rafae, because we have seen a preview of that the last time that he was president, from 2016 to 2020. If there are a few words which describe Trump, people have called him a maverick. Of course, he's been always flamboyant, but also unpredictable and bold, I must say. So his focus would be on the domestic politics more. But having stated that, foreign policy is also an area where he takes keen interest. Last time when he was president, he was very disruptive in terms of his policies. What did he do, for instance? Number one, he didn't really believe in the Euro-Atlantic alliance as much as all the American presidents do. He didn't believe in NATO as much. So the foundation of the Euro-Atlantic relationship was weakened during his time. Secondly, he withdrew from the Paris Accord because, he's one of those who are like climate change deniers in a way. Thirdly, he withdrew from the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. And that created a lot of ripples for our region as well. Why? Because that meant that sanctions were reimposed on Iran, and then there was a whole reconfiguration in terms of Iran's reaction and sort of policies, which in many ways led to further sort of repercussions leading to events that we are even facing today. In terms of relations with Pakistan, President Trump, in the beginning of his presidency, last time around, was critical, and he actually made a couple of very strong statements within the context of counterterrorism. But subsequently, everything changed. What happened was that Trump realized that in Afghanistan it was an unwinnable war, and then he wanted a compromise with the Taliban. And for that, they needed Pakistan's help, Pakistan's facilitation, particularly, for example, in terms of they're establishing their contact with Mullah Brother, which Pakistan did. And America was very thankful for that. And so subsequently his tone and tenor in terms of the policy towards Pakistan changed quite a bit. Now this time around, the way I see it, we are going to have challenges and we are going to have opportunities. What would be the challenges? The challenges would be, number one, this whole thing, the US-China relationship. China, now America has a policy in play right now as we speak, which is called the so-called Indo-Pacific policy, the pivot to Asia, where India is the linchpin. And because of that, and I might add here that traditionally whenever Republicans have been in power in the US, our relations with Pakistan have been better relative to when Democrats have been in power there.
Yes.
But that scenario changed about 10 years ago. Why did it change? It changed with this, this American notion of containment of China. They wanted to contain China, they want to decouple China because they feel threatened by China's rise to almost a superpower status. And for that, they chose India as the counterweight to China. They also chose India as the net security provider in our region. And that is why the whole perspective and policy towards Pakistan changed. Now, that is going to stay in some ways, because that US policy is not going to dramatically change with Trump. Although Trump is less of a believer in that, because we all have to remember he's a real estate developer, he's a businessman, he's a deal maker. He doesn't like conflicts, he doesn't like wars, and he said that. And during his last term, he didn't really start any conflict, any military conflict. In fact, he was a deal maker, the deal with the Taliban, other deals, other than the fact that he destroyed the deal with Iran. But that is another story because he's very pro-Israel more than the Democrats. Now, for Pakistan, the challenge would be, first of all, how do we navigate that? When sort of because Trump is the type of president who would say, okay, he very well could say something like that, either you are with us or against us, although it's less likely to happen because this is not a post 9/11 scenario. But
Definitely.
Still, they would want us to sort of, to take a position closer to the US perspective rather than the Chinese. And we have a very close relationship with China. It's a, all-weather strategic cooperative partnership. So that there would be a challenge because as this friction grows, there are some problems that we'll have to sort of navigate through. We'll have to have a very well-calibrated policy. The second thing is he's talked about tariff. In fact, Trump says the tariff is the most beautiful word for me. And he plans to impose 50 to 60% tariffs on China and also on other countries, which would include Pakistan. And we have to remember that Pakistan has a big part of its trade after the Chinese with America. We have about $9 billion worth of trade, and we get our biggest trade surplus from America, actually.
Definitely.
So that could, our exports could be affected. Then again, some of the other areas which could be challenging, this counterterrorism. America is very, Trump was last time as well very interested in that. Again, and sometimes Americans come up with strong language in terms of, like the counterterrorism and the ongoing terrorism in the region in the context of Pakistan's kind of role. Although we have been a victim of terrorism, but still America and our Western friends sometimes, they kind of, they have their own sort of perspective of that. So there could be additional pressure if the Americans feel in any ways threatened directly or indirectly from the terrorism emanating from this region. But that would carry an opportunity as well, because that is also an area where Pakistan and America could work together to put that pressure on Afghanistan, from where this terrorism is emanating.
Of course, an area where both the countries could work on. Mr. Khalid, I know you're waiting very patiently to answer that, but I'd like to include comments from Dr. Jamil first, of course. Sir, a deal maker, as Trump has been called. How do you see American foreign policy with regards to that? Of course, as he mentioned prior to these elections and in his election campaign as well, the war in Ukraine, he said, and he vowed to finish it in 24 hours. Of course, he's the deal maker. How would you comment on his politics and, of course, his foreign policy and now the challenge that he'll have to address?
Well, a deal maker, but a very tough negotiator. And as he says, and as he said this time also during his election campaign, that well, if he was there in power, the Ukraine war had not started. If he was there in power, Iran would not have really reached to that level of enrichment. And if he was in power, not a single soldier would have been killed in Afghanistan at the time of withdrawal, because in his time, there was not a single soldier of United States who was killed by Taliban, because he had warned very clearly Taliban that if anyone is killed, the US soldier or anyone there from the NATO forces, then he will really deal with them very sternly. So he is a deal maker, but a very tough deal maker. So if we understand his total approach towards the foreign policy, he is less inclined towards the multilateralism. He is inclined towards the bilateralism. And Mr. Jauhar has already mentioned and how the only country which walked out from or withdrew from the Paris Accord is United States, and it was his time. Climate change is the existential threat the entire world recognizes. Mr. Trump doesn't recognize that, and it's America first. If 30 years down the line or 100 years down the line, if the world start diminishing, various continents and various islands start diminishing, he wouldn't bother at this stage. So COVID was one aspect and one example which could give us some idea about his mindset. So this time along, what challenges which the world can face, and Pakistan is no exception to it. Pakistan would probably face more challenges. Yes, we are the biggest trade partner in our states. We've been having a good relations and, of course, some roller coaster relations with the United States. And we have not forgotten, as Mr. Jauhar has also mentioned, that once his tweet, what he had sent and what he told Pakistan or what he wrote about Pakistan, that the U.S. Has been dishing out about $33 billion to Pakistan. And, Pakistan in turn has been doing nothing but lies and deceit. So those kind of words initially. Later on, yes, because of the mediation to start. And by the way, the mediation later on, he took us out from Doha conference. Hardly he was not really very inclined to keep Pakistan going with the entire session of Doha conference, although Pakistan initially facilitated that. So what are the challenges with Pakistan? Then will come on opportunity also. What are the challenges?
Definitely, of course, these are the areas for cooperation, and these are the areas that Pakistan has seek to collaborate as well, of course, because these are the issues that not just affect Pakistan, but the whole region and the world at large. Mr. Khalid Taimur, of course, when we talk about the new president-elect, and of course the American foreign policy, we know he's talked about it in a very bold manner, in a very clear manner, and from his past presidency, we know he was very clear on a few issues as well, such as the Afghan peace process. What do you think is going to happen in this term?
Yeah, first of all, we need to understand that in this term, he will be a more mature president, because during the last term, we would see him making many erratic decisions, making many decisions which were even not liked by Pentagon or CIA. He was practically not on talking terms with various agencies. But in this term, we are seeing that, number one, he is selecting He has already started selecting his new team. We saw yesterday Elon Musk meeting with the Iranian ambassador. Although whatever they talked, it did not come out. But of course, whatever they are going to talk, it is going to be ending up in the business, because Elon Musk is a businessman. So Trump now has to immediately go for a ceasefire in Gaza, because Trump and his son-in-law were the main movers and shakers of the Abrahamic Accord with the Arab world. And that was Trump's brilliant idea, but it got forestalled because of this Gaza war. So of course Trump is going to put pressure on Israel. Maybe they would go to some kind of ceasefire solution, and Trump is going to come out like a hero in front of the Arab world, also in front of the Muslim world also, and in front of the Jews also. So he is going to, so for any kind of solution for Palestine, Iran is one of the major stakeholders. So we are seeing that they have already started engaging Iran. The second thing is the Ukraine war, because Trump has not been in favor of Ukraine war right from the start. So of course he is going to engage with Russia, and he is going to find some solution for that. So if he has a solution for, he comes up with a solution for Gaza, if he comes up for the solution for Ukraine, then of course he is going to become a very popular statesman all over the world. As far as Pakistan is concerned, we have seen that in some areas the US policy regarding Pakistan has remained consistent after 9/11, especially the war on terror and the other things. But yes, on the other hand, we have seen that after Salala, there was a dip in the relationship between Pakistan and US. But now that relationship is again getting momentum. Although politically we have seen less progress, but on the side of the security, on the side of the counter-terrorism, we are seeing more cooperation with the US. And of course, for US, Pakistan is going to remain a strategically important partner, because US feels that for containment of China, they need to engage more with Pakistan. As far as China is concerned, Trump is definitely going to have harsh policies towards China. You just talked about putting more tariffs on goods from Pakistan or other countries. But those tariffs are going to affect the American consumers also. They are not going to affect China or Pakistan more, but they are going to affect more pressure on them. And another thing which Trump has to face is BRICS, because BRICS is coming up big, because if BRICS is going to start with their own, if they start with their own currency, we have seen China, Russia trading in their own currencies, and dollar is getting less and less importance in this region. So Trump has to face with lots of things, but I think that during this tenure, he will be more focused on business diplomacy. He will be more focused on making bilateral friends, and of course he is not in favor of multilateralism, but in some places he has to sit with the Chinese. Like last year, President Xi Jinping and Joe Biden, they sat together during the APEC conference. This time the APEC conference held in the Latin American country, but the American president did not go, but President Joe Biden had gone to Peru, and he attended the APEC conference just yesterday. It concluded. So
a lot of room for cooperation. That's what you're saying, of course. Mr. Jauhar Saleem, of course, when we talk about foreign policy, Pakistan has its own set of challenges that it faces, and of course Pakistan, of course, aligns its foreign policy with those issues that it faces. I'll talk about a very recent, because there's a lot been going on Pakistan's diplomatic front. One of the major event being the SCO that was held recently. Of course, prior to that, there was a lot of propaganda being spread regarding Pakistan facing diplomatic isolation. But of course, those who were spreading that propaganda, they had to come into Pakistan by themselves to attend the very conference. Gives a testament to Pakistan's, of course, diplomatic successes that has come in the recent past. What do you think, of course, and how do you think this momentum that we're seeing on Pakistan's diplomatic front, the successes that we're seeing, and of course all the developments, how do you think this momentum can be kept consistent?
Yeah, very interesting. Rafae, but let me just add a bit to sort of, the Trump's foreign policy course of action that is likely. From our perspective particularly. You see, he's already building his team.
Right.
And this time there are a couple of very important distinctions relative to the last time he was in power. And what are those? First of all, last time he surrounded himself with generals actually, Secretary of Defense or General Mattis, who actually I met some years ago. And then the Chief of Staff and Kelly and so many others, it was all generals or people, you'd say people from the deep state in America, or the establishment as they say. But this time, the people that he has chosen for key positions already, for instance, the Chief of Staff is the lady who was his campaign manager. Secretary of Defense, he has indicated that he'll nominate a hardline journalist. Then again, ambassador to Israel, again a who was a presidential candidate, Huckabee, and a very, very pro-Israel. Then again, in terms of Secretary of State, the key position, I think they're talking about Marco Rubio, again a hardliner and nothing to do with the establishment. So this means that this time around, he would really want the American foreign policy to have his imprint, and he'll probably be more bold, even bolder than before in terms of the initiative he takes. So that would definitely impact Pakistan. We also have to remember that he's very transactional in terms of his foreign policy orientation. He does not really have he doesn't believe in an ideology or certain values, which were the values of American establishment or at least the mainstream. He has his own. He could meet the dictators on the one hand, like he did with the North Korean leader, and he could praise Putin, and he could criticize the democratic leaders as well, based on how the transactional relationship is going. So that will bring some more challenges for us, because we'll have to calibrate our foreign policy towards the Americans, I think in a very well thought out manner. Now, coming back to your question, the SEO. Yes, the holding of SEO, and prior to that, there were visits by the prime ministers of, Malaysia, for instance, or the Deputy Prime Minister Raja and others. So I think those countries which have been saying that Pakistan has been isolated, India primarily, that is a narrative which had been dispelled again and again, and the holding of this conference and a lot of other high-level visits which took place, again, disabused the diplomats all around the world of this notion. There is no isolation here.
No isolation, of course. I'd like to include comments from Dr. Jamil as well. No isolation in Pakistan, of course. That's the propaganda that was shunned in this SEO. Dr. Jamil, a very positive momentum going on for Pakistan on its diplomatic front. How do you think this momentum can be made consistent? And of course, how do you think more can be achieved and capitalized from this momentum?
That's right. In fact, once we try and achieve a momentum of what we did, really, it was a marvelous job, which are all stakeholders, contributed, particularly the Foreign Office, in this SEO arrangement and all the way it was conducted and the way it gave us the success and the very propaganda against Pakistan, that Pakistan has been isolated. That was obviously, that died of its own death. So yes, how to maintain the momentum? Now we must realize that the world is drifting from global west to global east, and now that is where the challenges also rises. Although we have proved that Pakistan has not been isolated, but at the same time we are discussing about Trump entry and Trump second Trump 2.0 term. So in that context, if we see it, then we'll have to really very, very carefully calibrate our foreign policy. And that has already been discussed with regard to the China. We have our Gwadar port, we have our CPAC, and this SCO in the same context. And SCO is obviously spearheaded by China and Russia, the two major powers in it. So this drift from global west to global east, from unipolarism to the multipolarism, that really bothers the United States a lot. And in that context, that China containment is basically designed to really delay that, or at least disrupt that, if not completely finish that. So, in the process, obviously, the CPAC and our partnership with China, with what would be the view of United States, and at what stage United States may think that Pakistan should not really further intensify that. So that has to be calibrated. And second, which I now anticipate with the once I look all the nominees of the Trump administration, the 2.0 administration in the coming term, starting from 21st January, some person like Steve, and then a special NY.
Yes, of course, definitely. I'd like to include comments from Khalid, Taimur, Akram as well. Of course, as I think Dr. Jamil, there's some trouble connecting with you. We cannot hear you. We'll try reconnecting. But of course, Mr. Khalid, Pakistan, when we talk about its foreign policy, of course, economy, it's one of the major factors that is being focused on at the moment. We know that the government has been putting in a lot of effort to revitalize the national economy. There's also a lot of effort by the government to increase foreign direct investment in the country and, of course, attract investors from our friendly countries and all over the world. How do you think the foreign policy, the changes in the foreign policy and the foreign policy can be made aligned with these interests of revitalizing the national economy and attracting foreign direct investment?
Yes, first of all, let me say one thing about our foreign office, that I guess the two ambassadors over here, they were a bit humble, and because it was acknowledging their own department. But as an outsider, I must say that the Foreign Office has been doing a wonderful job, and this SCO conference has been a big success, because I have been following SCO conferences in Kazakhstan, in Tajikistan, and in Uzbekistan in last couple of years, and I got a chance to attend few of these SCO conferences in the think tank platform. But I must appreciate the Foreign Office. I must appreciate that the way they have done their diplomacy, that all the head of the governments were not only they were here, but they had lots of other ministers who had come in their entourage. So it was not only SCO conference, but it was a sort of bilateral visit from all these government departments. And the foreign ministry had been like they were up and all the time for 24 hours they were working, and it was an excellent show. And now coming over to the foreign direct investment, yes, we see the stock exchange going up, we see IMF giving us a 3-year plan, because previously it was a 1-year IMF plan, and after every 1 year the government was in panic. But now 3 years down the line, if we see there is some kind of stability we can see. Also we can see the role of SAFC, because as recently the army chief had said that we have converted the red tapeism into the red carpet. So what he meant was that we had made this SAFC for the foreign direct investors to come. We are seeing Saudi people coming, yes. We are seeing the UAE coming in, and many other countries. But yes. Overall, if we see Pakistan's foreign policy, it has turned tremendously from a downward trend to an upward trend. Ambassador Jauhar Saleem, once he was the foreign secretary, we saw him playing lots of role in that, and he had been on the top of everything. And now whatever legacy he has left, the Foreign Office is continuing it with that.
Well, definitely. Both the ambassadors that are with us in, of course, this conversation, they have played a tremendous role in representing Pakistan and, of course, promoting Pakistan's national interests. Mr. Jauhar Saleem, with regards to Pakistan's national interests, that brings me to another challenge that Pakistan faces, of course, from Afghanistan. That is regarding the security threat that prevails. And of course, there's cross-border terrorism. Pakistan has time and time again reiterated and called upon the Afghan interim authorities to take action against this militancy. Of course, we know that little action was taken by the Afghan interim side. How do you think Pakistan should align its foreign policy to deal with this challenge in particular?
Yes, this is a very critical challenge that we face. And I might say that while there is no diplomatic isolation, and this is a propaganda or a narrative which is just false, being built by the Indians, and that has been dispelled for everyone to see.
Yes.
But at the same time, the challenges for our foreign policy are there, and there are two types of challenges. One is how to translate our diplomatic endeavors into economic traction, into economic cooperation, into enhanced economic cooperation, into geoeconomics that we really harp upon. That is one. And the second is how to enhance our security in terms of the challenge emanating from Afghanistan, this challenge of terrorism. And that has been hurting us. We are the country which has, over the last few decades, seen 100,000, close to 100,000 deaths, casualties because of that. We are the country which saw or witnessed or experienced economic losses of around $150 billion. In many ways, it just paralyzed our economy, and we've suffered the consequences. And now we have to ensure that while we are trying to rebuild our economy, while trying to stabilize our economy from a crisis situation, we need to ensure two things: that we build the economic bridges, because unless we are part of the, the global supply chain effectively, and unless we are we are able to build equitable and balanced economic relationships with key partners in the world, and promote our connectivity and ambitions of becoming a regional trade hub, we are not going to be an emerging economy, that which is our basically objective.
Yes.
Secondly, we cannot also do that unless we are safe.
Yes.
Unless we have an environment which is safe. For instance, our Chinese
friends.
friends.
Wars are bad for business.
Yeah, and also the terrorism. Remember how much it has impacted the security situation in terms of our vision of CPAC, our cooperation with China and many other countries. Because when the investors want to invest in a country, what is the first thing that they look at? They look at the security environment. And that is why this challenge coming from Afghanistan is a critical challenge.
Yes.
Now, and for that, I believe that we have tried bilaterally, and we have tried a multi-dimensional approach, including kinetic means, including diplomatic means, including economic pressure as well. It hasn't really worked as much, and now I think it's time for a regional approach, which was in fact something broached during the last SEO as well. We have to, because other countries also feel threatened. For instance, Iran, for instance, the STANs, the Central Asian republics, even countries like Russia, they feel threatened by the terrorist networks which are operating from Afghanistan.
Definitely, it's a global phenomenon.
Yeah, and Americans would be, and the Westerns would be in the coming days. And we have to coalesce all that that concern and that fear into something tangible, which could be through a regional approach, through an international approach, whereby we could put enough pressure on Afghanistan, whereby we could convince them to stop that, to put an end to that. And that, I think, would be crucial for us in the next
we hope saner voices prevail there as well, because of course that's a lot of damage and a lot of instability that comes out from this militancy and terrorism. And of course the region, the world, in these times of heightened tensions, of course we need the world to progress economically, and of course we need a more inclusive environment. Dr. Jamil, I'd like to come towards you. Of course when we talk about the challenges that Pakistan faces, of course, as Ambassador Jauhar mentioned, CPEC entering its phase 2, and of course we know the propaganda that was being spread regarding Pakistan's diplomatic front. Of course I'm talking about diplomatic isolation. It was something that was being spread from the Indian quarters. When we talk about CPEC, of course there's a concern regarding the Chinese personnel security, and of course we know there's one neighbor of Pakistan that has been trying to sabotage CPEC as well. How do you think the foreign policy aligns with regards to the Chinese security concerns and, of course, with India trying to sabotage CPEC for Pakistan? What room do you think Pakistan has to deal with this challenge?
In fact, that's a very important point, even from the forthcoming American administration point of view, because the kind of support which India is giving to the some of the terrorist organizations such as TTP and the kind of operations they are supporting against the CPEC and against the security of the Chinese. So that is not only the evidence is available and Pakistan has produced those evidence, but it has also been written by some of the think tanks in the United States. So yes, in order to undermine or in order to have that competition with Pakistan or the kind of rough relations with Pakistan, India is doing that as an overall policy what they have. But at the same time, that appears that since India is the part of the spring of alliance, which is the United States and Philippines, Australia, Japan, and so on, and we are the part of the spring of pearls, which is Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and other countries, right up to the South China Sea. So from that standpoint, yes, it appears that it becomes a part of overall policy, or it becomes. India, as a matter of fact, is trying to take double advantage. One, that they are taking an advantage of their relations with the United States, particularly with regard to there is enhanced collaboration, defense collaboration with the United States, just to contain China in this entire region and have an influence in Indo-Pacific Ocean, whether it's through the Quad, and obviously India is not part of AUKUS, but still indirectly it's supporting that. So that is one part, and that's why in Pakistan we have, besides other things, the security issue against the Chinese. That would become a big challenge from the Chinese side, and they are expecting us to really improve that. And Pakistan is doing its best. Pakistan, as a matter of fact, has proved its battle in terms of war against terrorism and in terms of dealing with the terrorists. But then it's a complete.
And well, of course, Pakistan will continue to prove its mettle as well. Of course, Mr. Khalid Taimur, of course, as they say, you cannot change your neighbors. But of course, you can change how you choose to deal with them. How do you comment on that?
Yes, because we have to look at two neighbors, one towards east and China, Afghanistan and India both. So we have been, I would say, in last couple of years, very trying to be very cooperative and friendly with India. But at the same time, we have seen India had been hitting hard right from starting from Article 370, then 35A, then India coming hard on Pakistan now. They are trying to play the cricket politics and everything. So we have seen in last couple of years, India has not shown any kind of friendship hand or any kind of thing towards Pakistan. They have been blaming Pakistan for cross-border terrorism.
They would be hypocrites if they did, because yes, they've been doing quite the opposite.
And similarly, we are seeing towards in Afghanistan also, after the Taliban regime had come in power, they have been at odds with us on many things. They are not cooperating with us on the issue of the militants. They have not been cooperating with us on many things. But at the same time, they want us to do their transit trade through them. As per the UN statistics, Taliban during their first year of the government, they earned more than $1 billion through transit trade from various countries. Iran sending their goods to Central Asia, Tajikistan using that corridor, Pakistan using that corridor. So I would say that Pakistan's policy had been very moderate, but now with Trump in power, we can foresee that he may put some kind of pressure on India to have good terms with Pakistan, but that would depend on that how Trump would deal with Pakistan. Yes, Pakistan's importance will remain there because Trump has to deal with Iran, Trump has to deal with so many other things. So I'm sure that he's not going to open another front and have some kind of bad relationship with Pakistan. But at the same time, in Afghanistan, the Trump administration is going to face a brand new situation, because last time once he was there, he was trying to lure in Taliban, he was trying to talk to them, he was trying to avoid US casualties in Afghanistan. But right now we have a government in Afghanistan which is not recognized by US since last 3 years. We have a government in Afghanistan whose all funds are frozen in United States. So Trump has to, we now have to see that what Trump is going to do with these Taliban.
All eyes on Trump's policies
Yes,
right
yes.
now is what I'm gathering. Of course, that's the conversation. That's a wrap-up of the conversation we had. Of course, the developments that we're seeing in the world, and of course, how foreign policies of not just Pakistan, not just the United States, but the foreign policies of all the global players are going to affect these, of course, challenges, and how they're going to be resolved. I'd like to thank all of our panelists, former Foreign Secretary and President of IRS, Jauhar Saleem, Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan, a former ambassador, and Khalid Taimur Akram, who is an IR expert. Thank you all for your time and being part of the conversation. Of course, see you same time tomorrow. That wraps up the foreign policy aspect for today. See you same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.